All right, welcome back. We are days away from Christmas over here. Is Santa going to bring us a winter market this year? Seems like with all the new changes going on, we're just out of the frying pan and into the fryer. Sean Humphries, pleasure to be here. My name is Vaughan Zawadzki, and we're mortgage people. All right. Well, we've had a heck of a week up here in the Great White North. Sean and I were off last week, sick. We both got the something.
Hardly anything happened last week, though, so
Didn't miss a beat.
Wasn't a big deal.
Our government's in great shape. Our financial policies are simple and easy to understand, and we have a captain of the ship for our finance minister.
I mean, he may not be the captain of the ship by the time people listen to this. So it's such a moving target.
Interim
right
kind of feel to it, right?
It does.
It feels like we're just waiting for the adults to arrive and get this Lord of the Flies show over with.
It's like at when like a hockey team or any sports team is like, this is a losing season, we're firing our head coach and we're just gonna let some guy hold the reins for until the end of the season, where we're gonna clear the decks. That's what it feels like. We've got like an interim head coach right now.
Yeah, it would be nice if there was something like a first round draft pick, that we could be losing for, but I'm not sure what the sugarcoating is on this one.
Yeah, there's no first round draft pick coming at all, is there? It's just but I guess like if you think about, like, depending on which political way you're leaning, there's a new prime minister waiting in the wings. He's probably going to cut out the carbon tax, so maybe that's your first round draft pick if that's what does it for you.
I mean, that was coming anyway, like at this point, that's not a bonus. And no matter what no matter what way I think that you're politically leaning, I think we're all leaning in the direction of change, which it kind of only puts us with one result, and that would be Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party. So whether you want that or not, I don't know, but everybody seems to be looking for change, even within the current administration. They're saying it's time for change. So the writing has been on the wall for a while.
For sure. But that hasn't stopped them from implementing all sorts of new policies around housing, which we're going to talk about as well.
For sure. But first, I want to touch on the inflation numbers came out for Canada. Things are looking good, 1.9%. So we went down and we went up a little bit, and now we're back down a little bit. So that's safe. That's safe for more rate cuts in the future, which we're all looking forward to. What's your take, Sean?
Yeah, certainly not nothing groundbreaking, I don't think. I think it was right around 2%. So they're not necessarily making any major decisions based on that. I think that the Bank of Canada, it was neither bad enough or good enough for there to be any clear, we need more rate cuts. But if you talk to many economists, they still see more rate cuts coming, despite what the market is currently pricing in. So I think we'll certainly have more. They just will be a little bit more gradual than what we've been experiencing over the last two rate cuts.
That seems to be the temperature out there, is that we may just slip into 25 basis point. We may be done with the big ones. I don't know, but as soon as some new news comes out, it changes everything. So I still think that the will wind up at a 2% overnight rate. So we still have a way to go, but we're like well on our way. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas. I think that
we're at 3.25% now. So, I'm calling for 2.5 seems to be the consensus.
By what we're thinking, summertime, springtime,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Spring. I mean, if we get a 25 basis point cut in the next, in the first meetings of the year, we'll be off. And the U.S. Fed cut by 25 basis points. They're still battling inflation though, so they have a different. There's a whole different outlook and a different set of criteria for the States, but that pushes the spread from between the Canadian overnight rate and the Fed rate to 1.25%. So we always like to keep it in that 1% range ish, so that it doesn't negatively impact our dollar up here. So 1.25 as a spread, that's not too bad between Canada and the US. So all in all, it seems pretty stable, and seems like the outlook is pretty good there too.
Yeah, I think the metric that everybody is probably going to start focusing on now is maybe less on the inflation number and more on the employment number. I noticed a much bigger reaction to the employment number being high at 6.8% unemployment rate to the inflation, which seems to be floating in and around the bottom threshold of the band that we want to be in, was just 2 to 3%. So I think if we're in that 2 to 3%, but we're still getting high inflation, that's giving the Bank of Canada fuel to lower the policy rate further. And I don't see a big recovery on employment right around the corner at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging. I guess we have different sort of labor markets, and we'll see where we can increase employment, and we need to get the economy cooking again in order
Yeah.
to get the employment cooking again.
And just for reference, like the Bank of Canada's overnight rate was at 1.75%. So going down to 2% or 2.5% is not wildly different.
Not at all.
I really think the thing that's keeping us buoyed higher is the U.S. Federal Reserve really not having a need to lower their policy rate at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think the Bank of Canada is really supposed to be focused on that spread, between the
No.
two countries. But I think inevitably we wind up focusing on it to keep our dollar strong. So
yeah, and that's not working so far. We're under 70 cents for that.
It's pretty abysmal if you're planning a trip to the U.S. I mean, I wouldn't plan a trip to the U.S. right now based on the strength of the dollar. Hopefully,
Right.
with a new government, and possibly better relationship. I mean, you see all the headlines and stuff with the tariffs and Donald Trump and Trudeau promising more border security, and Trump thinks he has a victory there. It's like, this is a whole different political animal than we've been used to in my lifetime
For sure.
in Canada.
But whatever they want to, like, whatever appeases that. Can we use stronger security at the border? Absolutely. Is there technology that we should probably have implemented already? Definitely. So if that's what gets us to that point, and we were going to get there anyway, and we appease Donald Trump, that puts us in a better winning position. And all the border provinces along the border, I guess they're all along the border, but all of those provinces are stepping up saying, yeah, we're doing this. Alberta is saying we're putting these things in, and Ontario is saying we're doing these things. So I think we just need to get through this next 4 years. And I think there's still a chance for us to come out as winners as a result of that.
Yeah, I really like Uncle Dougie Ford's take on that one. He's like, well, we'll just cut off the power supply to Michigan.
It's like a dad, you know what I mean? Like, you don't like it, I'm turning the lights off.
That's it. We're going to turn this car around. We're all going home. So I definitely appreciated that, and he'll be around, long after the federal government changes hands. So.
Yeah, and I think regardless of which way you're leaning politically, it's just nice to have somebody speaking for us, right? Because Trudeau's not speaking. He's obviously in huge turmoil. Just having somebody step up and say, here's where we're at. We're not going to be pushed around. I appreciated that. Regardless of what I think about Doug Ford overall, having somebody in there to speak for our interests as part of Team Canada is good.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that that I think that he's necessarily done a great job. Putting paper bags back in the LCBO is not necessarily the win that we needed for Ontarians, but but I did like his take. That I'll give credit where I think it's due, and I think that him standing up, two big boys there, him and Donald Trump doing a little political battle. I think that's good for us.
So, well, I agree. I think, anyway, let's move on.
Yeah. So with all the mortgage rule changes and the access to more money for Canadians to borrow towards housing and the lower interest rates, is this guaranteed to push housing prices up? I mean, we're going to find out really soon. Probably early in the new year, we'll get an idea of what that's going to look like. What's your projection here?
So I think that it will have a certain effect on certain houses in certain markets. I don't believe that all of a sudden all of these new rules will push all prices up over $1 million or all of a sudden increase the value of all those properties. Case in point would be the condo market in Toronto. We have way too much supply of a certain type of unit, mainly 1-bedroom condos that not as many people are buying as they were buying a couple of years ago. And we've got a lot of supply coming to the market in the next 2 years or so. So I don't, regardless of what the new rules are, I don't see that price point changing at all. But if we're looking at semi-detached townhouses, and I'm speaking here in the
Yeah,
GTA that
I
are maybe
agree.
in that $1 million mark, I see those certainly going above $1 million on average.
Yeah, I think it could push up those prices by sort of 10 to 20%. I don't think it's unrealistic to think, and those were highly competitive properties and always maintained their value. And that was sort of where the biggest sort of flexibility in terms of like that extra, getting an extra $100,000 or something for a selling price. I think it's that, which was the stressed out first time home buyers. That's really what it was built around.
Yeah.
We should see that probably increase 10 to 20%. So if you were a townhome owner and you were thinking, oh, the value of these townhouses can never reach more than $1 million, I think you're in for a pleasant surprise if you're going to try to sell
Yeah.
your house in the new year.
Yeah, I think we're at anything in the 900 range could certainly, or 950 could certainly continue to go up above $1 million. I don't think that there's any the holdback was that people don't have $200,000.
The down payment holdback.
The
Yeah.
down payment's big, right? So now you at $1 million, you need $75,000. It's $125,000 less. So meaning that a teacher and a police officer who are a couple have $100,000 incomes or so, and they've got only have 75,000. Only like 75,000 is a lot of money,
Isn't
right?
it
Like
crazy?
$75,000, all of a sudden you can buy a property at $1 million, or at 1.1, you can buy, whatever that $85,000 is the down payment. So all of a sudden that opens that up. It gets a lot more competitive around that price mark of $1 million. But I don't see a $400,000 condo all of a sudden being worth, $670,000.
Yeah, I don't see it having any effect on the condo market. That has its own sort of set of economic criteria, essentially supply and demand. That it'll take a few years, but the condo market will also, get back on track and start to increase as well as less and less are being built right now. So we still have a housing crisis. Now we just have potentially more money to throw around at it. We just
Right.
need to get shovels into the ground and get some stuff built.
The question I saw online was, will looser lending policies encourage more people to buy homes they can't afford in the first place? I love how
Hell yes,
spicy that is.
of course it will. That's the kind of sensational headline that I like and that I support. Like, of course it will. It's a little bit irresponsible. I mean, I called that out when Chrystia Freeland first announced some of these changes. I'm like, yeah, we have to do something, probably around moving the insured mark up from 999,000 to somewhere. But what it does is it incentivizes people to borrow more money. Whether they can afford it or not, I don't know. We have stress tests, in
Yeah,
place for a reason.
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
There's stress tests. We're already like really guiding people into what they can afford. Like I find that the rules are tighter now than they were. Lenders have pulled back on some of these extra programs where all of a sudden people can borrow more. Certainly they can borrow more, but the guardrails are very strict for people to say like, oh, they can't afford it in the first place. If they're borrowing the money, the bank, they can definitely afford it. It's 2% higher than
That's
what
right.
they're getting qualified at, 2% higher than what they could otherwise.
Which
So I
has
think
really
it's a little,
protected us against any kind of problems that have come out of this high interest rate environment that we've been in for the last couple of years, right? Is that everybody had to qualify at 5.25%. So when interest rates went there, nobody's out of pocket. I mean, life's going to cost more, and right now that stinks.
yeah.
But we're not gonna see as some kind of distressed market, and you know prices selling way below average. Um, the balance is kept.
Yeah. I think prices are set to go up, but I think it's based on a variety of factors. Interest rates coming down, the rules being a little bit better. I think we're going to have a really good housing market this spring compared to what we've had the last couple of years. I don't see it going up dramatically, though.
So just in sort of tandem with that, I was reading an article in the Financial Post, and this is commissioned by BMO Capital Markets. So Robert Kavik says, so they've been tracking house prices and sales, and is it a buyer market or seller's market? In general across Canada, we had a 26% year over year jump in house prices in this November compared to last November. That's no surprise. Last November was about as low as it got anyway. But new listings have fallen. So I found that's interesting, because to me that suggests that people will be holding off on selling their property until they see that sort of juice get pumped back into the market. So that will tell you that the buyer's market would be disappearing if people are holding off. There's less inventory on the market. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, just judging by what I'm seeing from my clients, like I had a client buy last night. They jumped on a property in Innisfil that had been listed one day. It was priced exactly where it should be. And it was the nicest property that they'd seen in their price range. So well marketed, nice properties, well priced are going to sell. And versus what we were seeing 6 months ago, which was well marketed, well priced properties are sitting for 3 weeks to 4 weeks because people are not jumping in, or they're waiting to find out what's going to happen with the Bank of Canada's interest rate policy. So there are more buyers, and there are more confident buyers out there now.
So do you think that less listings, do you think that means that the stuff that was on the market is sold, or do you think people are pulling them off and waiting? I don't know what they're waiting for, 2-3 months in order for them to, like, let's say if you had a 1.2 million property, maybe you relist at 1.3 and get it.
Yeah.
Once the market acclimatizes to the new rules, maybe we get another rate cut, confidence continues to build back. But buyer's
Yeah.
market disappearing tells you that, if you were on the fence on the other side, if you're waiting around because you think that there's more bottom to reach, what this is saying, let me read this quote. So they do 23 cities they track along the country, and they said, in fact, no outright buyer's market remain among 23 cities we track. So that tells you right there, if you were expecting it to reach a new bottom, it's already rebounding.
Assuming that's the top 23 cities in Canada, I would assume that there are some buyers markets still available. They're still prevalent outside of some of those major cities. Some place where maybe there's not as many amenities. People don't necessarily want to drive as far out. I would think that there's still buyers markets there, but I would think that they would still be they'd be decreasing as well.
Yeah, like maybe in my hometown of Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia, maybe you can
Shubenacadie.
probably get some deals there. You can probably get some deals.
Yeah, let us know. I mean, other than Shubenacadie, I'm not as aware of that particular market, but I think that there's a combination. I think that buyers are more confident. They're scooping up the properties that are well priced, and people who have maybe higher aspirations on their selling price have probably pulled it off after the fall market. They didn't get what they wanted, and now they're targeting the spring market to come out next. So I think February and March will probably have another rate cut in January. And I think February and March will be really indicative of what we see for the spring market and then beyond.
I agree. I think that we're going to learn a lot. We're going to see where the trend is going to lead us We'll see if people are still timid to pull the trigger on a purchase. I think there's a lot of pent up demand. So at some point, it's going to get exciting again.
Yeah.
Now, just one thing to clear up, as you know, if you're reading headlines and you're reading news about the mortgage industry, we have first time home buyer. That term has come around a lot. It applies to a couple different things, right? So your land transfer tax, a first time home buyer is a very, very rigid. The government is not going to let you off the hook to pay this monstrous tax. You know, I've seen some land transfer tax up over $30,000. So on top of your down payment, you have to save for this closing costs. With the majority of that is land transfer tax. And the rules there, it's like if you've owned a property anywhere in the world at any time in your life, or have lived with somebody like a spouse that has owned a property, you are not a first-time home buyer. However, on the insured mortgage side, basically, well, Sean, explain. Can you break this one down? Basically, like everybody and their dog is a first-time home buyer.
The way I think about the new insured rules they're very similar to the RRSP rules. So if you have owned a home in the last 4 calendar years, or you've lived with a spouse that has owned the home, you are not a first-time home buyer. But if you've waited that 4 years, you now, and you haven't owned a home, your spouse that you live with has not owned a home, then you would be a first-time home buyer and you can get 30-year amortization.
But also, if you break up with your spouse, then you're a first-time home buyer again, right away.
You're a first-time home buyer again. Yeah, but that's the same as the RSP rules too.
Right.
So they want to give you the ability to be able to, I guess, get back in the market if you're in that position. And the one caveat that I want to mention is that if only one person, in order to qualify for the 30-year amortization as a first-time home buyer, only one person needs to qualify. So if your, spouse or your new spouse has owned a home and in the last few years, but you haven't, you qualify for the 30-year am. Also, if your parents are coming on title to help you purchase and they've owned a home before and you're a first-time home buyer, you still qualify for the first-time home buyer, for the first-time home buyer new insured rules, where you can get 30-year amortization.
That's right. So basically, everybody can qualify.
If you're not that everybody that's anybody, but
everybody's got an ex, and it's like, oh, broke up. Here we go.
Tell me all about it, Vaughan.
Pretty loose, right?
So,
all right, and I think that you had a couple notes here on the Bank of Canada and what is the direction? Where are we going? What is the Bank of Canada? What's our outlook?
Well, I think I think about what they put into their meeting notes and what they put out in the public to kind of get the public to start to think about our finances. And when, we go back to when Tiff Macklem lowered the policy rate and the Bank of Canada was down to 0.25%, and Tiff came out and he said, interest rates are going to be low for a very long time. And famous words from the Bank of Canada, because they wanted us to get out and spend money and borrow money and fix our homes and essentially spur activity and stimulate the economy. And then when interest rates went high, Tiff kind of said something else on the other side. He said, interest rates are going to be high and they may need to be higher for longer. And within 6 months, they started lowering the interest rates after that because they wanted us to.
Saying that they're not really giving us the straight goods here?
I think that they're giving us the goods, but I think that they want us to behave in a certain way. And their policy discussions and their meetings and their announcements, they put that out into the media. And then we start to either spend our money or save our money. And that's what makes the policy rate effective. Because if everybody just didn't know what the policy rate was and we were just going out and doing normal behavior, then it wouldn't have as much of an effect. So I
Yeah.
started thinking, like, what do they want? What do they want us to do right now?
Yeah, where are they steering the bus sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because certainly those announcements, oh, it's going to be low for a long time, and then it's not. And then, oh, it's going to
Yeah.
be high for long. And it's like, well, not really either.
Yeah. So right now they're saying that, they're going to more base it on data and what might happen now. And it almost feels like they're tapping the brakes a little bit and they're trying to slow down that momentum of interest rates coming down quickly and people's belief that interest rates are going to continue to drop, even though they really might. They might fall another 1.5%, but we don't know it. So they're saying, like, a quarter here, and the market is believing maybe only 50 basis points. And I think that fits the Bank of Canada's narrative really well. They don't want inflation to go up really quickly, and they don't necessarily want it to drop. They're trying to thread the needle a little bit when it comes to the policy rate. I think that's the era that we're in now, which is a little bit more unknown of what might happen.
Well, a measured response is always welcome for Canadians too.
Yeah.
We're ready to get back to whatever the old normal is, bring on the new normal, but like a little bit less excitement, in our financial markets would be a little more stability. Would be the old Canadian way.
Yeah.
Looking forward to getting back to that.
You don't want all the excitement, right?
It's a lot. It's been an incredible year in terms of changes, and we haven't really seen the full effect of that yet. I think you're right that the spring market or early spring market, late winter market, February March is going to really set the stage for what to expect for the balance of 2025. It may take a little while to heat up, but certainly at some point, this pent up demand, the gates will come crashing down, and we're going to be old school busy again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very likely the spring is a much more normal market. I don't think it's going to be insane. I don't think it's going to be slow like it's been the last couple of years. I think we'll be right in the middle, which is good news for the Bank of Canada. They want a certain amount of home purchases, but they don't want a 2017 or 2021 levels of home buying.
Yeah, they want to collect that land transfer tax that you will not qualify as a first-time home buyer on. The pockets have to get lined somehow.
Somehow, right?
Well, that's it for me. Sean, did you have anything else that you wanted to bring up?
No, but happy holidays, Vaughn. It's been a pleasure doing this with you, and looking forward to an amazing 2025 where we grow the Mortgage People podcast to new heights.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everybody out there as well.